Hi, this is George Alger, and welcome to today's segment of Our Ventura TV. Today, we're going to be discussing the topic of domestic violence. And joining us as our guest expert is Trish Steele, who is the founder and CEO of Safe Passage Heals. Welcome, Trish, and let's start with a brief description of your nonprofit.
So, George, my nonprofit's been around for over 28 years, and we help those who have emergency needs in a situation, finding themselves in a situation of domestic violence.
Very good. Now, just to make sure we're all on the same page here, can you give us a definition or description of what domestic violence means?
Domestic violence is like a cycle of incidents that happen in people's lives. The first one is abusive behavior, where you're being beaten or hidden, or you're being threatened by physical action of the opposite sex, okay? The second one is called mental abuse, which is more a psychotic type abuse that actually takes control of your whole life. They become very aggressive and controlling, and that your life becomes not your own anymore. That you feel like you're owned by this person, and they isolate you and get you to a point where you become actually a slave to every word that they speak to you. And then thirdly is your financial abuse. And a lot of women and people have been physically with the control of the mental, but financially robbing them of every financial situation that they may have as working as an employee, or any financial background that they might have had saved or so forth. And a lot of the financial abuse happens with a lot of elderly people, you know, that they get controlled and financially abused, and they're treated so disrespectful and degraded. So those are the three main things that happen when it comes to abusive relationships.
Okay, so what would you recommend as a first step or first series of steps to help someone get out of such a situation?
The first step is, George, that they need to come to realization that the relationship they're in is not a healthy relationship. And when they decide to make that change, they got to decide that they're never going to go back. It is a very thing that you have to really meditate on, because a lot of these abusive relationships, they're so in love, and they think that love is being controlled. And so the first step, they have to come to realize themselves that they're in an unhealthy relationship, and they have to do everything to get out and not look back. Because when you first make that phone call to get help, one of the things that they're going to ask you, did you file a restraining order? Because when you've been physically abused, file a restraining order in order for anybody to come and rescue you out of that relationship. And the second thing they're going to ask is, are you willing to be isolated for 30 to 90 days? Because what they're going to do is they're going to take you into a place where you're going to be safe. Because once you leave out of the abusive relationship, that abuser is on the hunt, wanting to find you. And you don't want, and the reason why the shelters isolate you is because they're trying to keep you safe. Nobody can know where that shelter is. Nobody can know where you're at, not even your family, friends, or anybody. And so it's a very drastic transition. And I just want to tell every woman, every man, every teenager, anybody, that you have to willing to take that big step with a very drastic change. But there's a victory after you do that.
Very good. Now, you mentioned when you make that call, what does that mean? Who would someone call when they're in such a circumstance?
Okay, there is a hotline number called it's called the Domestic Violence Hotline number. And that hotline number is 1-800-799 and the word SAFE, SAFE. They are the top hotline number 24/7 that you can call, and they will take you through the steps in your own city or where you're at to get help. And it's amazing. It's a protocol that you have to go through, but that hotline number is amazing.
Trish, do you have any advice on how someone might be able to sort of clearly represent abuse in their own life? So, for instance, there's arguments, maybe some bad things are said, but no one's, there's no physical things happening, would that classify as abuse or not? Or where is that threshold where, you consider yourself being either, well, certainly a physical abuse, I think, is easier to define because if someone hits you, there's that. But what about the sort of mental or psychological abuse?
Right. So the mental or psychological abuse can be helped. And it can be helped if you can admit to it, and as a couple to get therapy. And that's where Safe Passage comes in. Safe Passage Heals comes in, is that we have the most successful rate in counseling and helping those who have been victims of any form of abuse or domestic violence. And counseling is amazing. And the type of counseling we do, because I was a victim of domestic violence, because my counselor was a victim of domestic violence, we understand what it takes to break that cycle and those abusive behaviors and how to heal and start a whole new life.
Okay, very good. Now, I think you've brought up an important point, or at least it's an interesting one to me, and that is, okay, there's this area between where you would make a call to be, taken away or secluded. There's an area between that and, let's say, some early warning signs. And in that area, however wide or narrow it might be, there's an opportunity for counseling. There's an opportunity to somehow correct things. Can you just speak about that area in there, like help a person who may be watching this and maybe thinking, maybe wondering, am I in this area or not? Like they're not ready to ask for or make that call, as you were saying, but they're starting to, wonder about, is it something that I should be more proactive about trying to correct? What can you say about people in that area?
In that area, okay. So in that area of your relationship, if your relationship got off on the wrong foot, where there's a lot of disrespect, then that's where the area that you're going to have to make a decision of whether you are going to allow that to continue in your relationship. If you allow it to continue your relationship, you're gonna get to a point where you're gonna get immune to that, and your relationship's always gonna be abusive. But if you come to a point where you realize this is making me unhappy, I don't want to live like this anymore, then that's where you need to step up. First, you got to confront the person that is abusively disrespecting you, or just bad behavior. You need to build up the strength and not be in fear to say something. You need to see your worth. If you don't see your worth, then you're never going to come to a point of getting out of these bad relationships.
Thank you. Okay, we're just about out of time, Trish. I'm wondering if you could share a website that viewers could go to for more information, and if you have a summating message for the viewers. Okay.
So our website is Safe Passage Heals. That's HEALS.org. So it's safepassageheals.org. And it has so much information on there that will help anybody at any age going through any situation in their life. The one thing that we do have that we can help those that are in physical relationships, physically abusive relationships, is that we have a list of all the shelters. We have a list of the hotline that they can call. We have a list of all the resources to get people from point A to point Z. And in my mission statement. It's about them breaking the cycle and creating a whole new life for themselves that they can call home and happiness.
Very good, Trish. On that note, we're going to end things off. So thank you very much.
You're welcome.
This is George Alger signing off for this segment of Our Ventura TV. Until we meet again.